Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back for this afternoon session. This afternoon we'll be touching on financing for emerging ocean energy. We have a large and quite complementary panel with us this afternoon, touching from the European perspective that will be presented by Donag, and some different kind of support that are brought either through test centers, national schemes, or sectoral schemes in the wave sector with TIM. Through this different presentation, we will see that innovation for ocean energy is not only a technological thing, but innovation and new way of working is also happening in financing. The session will be in English, but some speakers are Spanish speakers, so you will certainly be able to ask questions afterwards, either in English or in Spanish. We can certainly accommodate that. I will directly start with Donag. We'll be covering the European dimension. Donag is Policy Director in Ocean Energy Europe, so the business organization that gather the overall European business on ocean energy. Donag, it's all yours.
Buenos días a todos y gracias por la oportunidad de hablar con ustedes hoy. That's the limit of my Spanish, I'm afraid. But no, thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's my first time in Bilbao, and it's been a real pleasure just to explore and to learn more about this beautiful city. So the title of my presentation is the fact that Europe backs ocean energy. So I'm going to talk about what that means in practice. I'll focus primarily on some of the funding opportunities that are available from a European level for ocean energy projects. But I also want to talk a little bit about the profile raising of ocean energy, which is really important, and also having that political support there to keep people aware of the benefits of ocean energy and why these funding programs need to be maintained. So first of all, a little bit about ourselves. Ocean Energy Europe is the trade association, as Xavier was saying, for the ocean energy sector in Europe. In fact, we're the largest network of ocean energy professionals in Europe. We have over 120 members, 10 lead partners, and our membership is a mix of project developers, technology developers, utilities, national and regional authorities, and also educational research institutes as well. So it's a coalition of different types of entities that are coming together and really trying to bring the technology to the point of commercial rollout. We cover 5 different technologies, or maybe 5.5 different technologies. You're probably familiar with them if you're in ocean energy. I won't describe them, but or the mechanics behind them, but there's tidal stream, wave energy, of course, ocean thermal energy conversion, which we're increasingly seeing being mixed with seawater air conditioning, SWAC. There's also salinity gradient, which is largest in the Netherlands, as well as tidal range as well. There's a few projects going on there. In terms of our objectives, well, we work for our members, so it's really about doing whatever we can to accelerate the development of ocean energy technologies. And that's both at an early stage, so if you're starting off with your computer modeling, right up to doing your first tank testing, but also right in an advanced stage as well. So if you're deploying your first half-scale or full-scale prototype, or even go up to the point of having a demonstration array or a pre-commercial array, and indeed beyond that as well, that's our job. So we do that by exploring various sources of funding, seeing how they could work for ocean energy and trying to make sure that they do work for ocean energy as well. We also want a supportive policy environment. So these can be wider things like market access rules, these kind of things. But a large part of what we do is raising the profile of ocean energy, and I'll return to that in a minute. We deliver value for our members in other ways as well. So there's a lot what we do in terms of getting information about what's happening to our members. So that could be by briefings, by webinars about recent calls, funding calls. We join EU projects as well, where we think that they'll add value to the sector by encouraging information sharing, allowing people to come together to come up with new ideas and new projects. We have a conference which is held every year, which is a good opportunity for networking. And that's a big part of what our association offers as well. It's a chance for people from the sector to come together and to know what their competitors are doing, to find partners to start projects, or to find members of the supply chain who can work for you for some kind of project that you have in mind. Okay, that's enough about ourselves. I said that I wanted to talk about profile building as well, because that is something that is really, really important for our sector. So we primarily, as the European Association, do it in Brussels, but it really needs to happen as well at a national and regional level as well to some extent. Because the reality is that quite a lot of people won't know much about ocean energy, and they won't know that it has the potential to provide 10% of Europeans' power demand by 2050. They won't know that there's a potential 400,000 jobs available that can be created by this new sector. They won't know that these jobs are in kind of coastal regions, that there's an opportunity to revitalize, sectors which have declined in recent years, be it fisheries or shipbuilding. There's a chance to revitalize them and use these skills for new opportunities. They won't know that there's an important role for ocean energy to play in terms of complementarity with other renewable sources, and that it can be a really good and efficient way of balancing Europe's future grids, which is going to have a lot more variable renewable penetration as well. And they don't know that Europe is actually at the forefront of this technology, which makes ocean energy, I think, a bit of an exception. There are not many areas where Europe can said to have a very clear lead in terms of the number of patents, for example, on new technologies, but ocean energy is certainly one. So we need to get these messages across. We need people to know what ocean energy is. We need to know they need to know why it matters, and they need to see the progress that's been made. And that's important when it comes to delivering strong political support as well. So I think we heard this morning that within the European institutions, within the Commission, and I think Xavier is probably the personification of it, there is a lot of strong support for ocean energy. There are people that believe in it. They can see the contribution that it can make to coastal communities. They can see the role that it can play in the blue economy, and they're fighting for it. And we need to raise this profile and have, as a sector, have a very clear view as to what we want and what we need and what we've already delivered, to turn this well-being into strong political support. And I put this slide up now. You may recognize him. This is the European Commissioner for Environment and Maritime Affairs, Carmenu Vella. I put this up here because this wasn't just some quote he made in an interview or in an offhand way. He made this quote in a meeting before Christmas that he organized with his counterpart for energy, in which they got the 28 member states energy ministers to come into a room and listen to him talk about ocean energy and why it matters and the value that it can add and the steps that are needed to make it happen. And it was because of people like Xavier and his team that were able to make this happen, but to do that you need the profile as well. So this is extremely valuable to the sector in terms of profile and political support. But when we talk to our members, they're always very glad about political support. But the next question is, how do you turn that into funding? Because they're very keen to do more innovation actions, do more research, put machines into the water when they're ready. But you can't do that without the funding to do so. So maybe just for the second part of the presentation, I'll go through some of the main funding sources that are available at a European level if there's anyone out there who's interested in progressing their own ocean energy technology. I'll just give a kind of a panorama overview, but I'll stay around afterwards if anybody wants to talk in a bit more detail as to what you need to do to access these funds. The first one is Horizon 2020, probably familiar to quite a few of you. Horizon 2020 is the EU's kind of innovation and research program. It's a 7-year program. It started in 2014, and it has been very good for ocean energy over the last 4.5 years. So since the program has started, over 180 million euro has gone into ocean energy projects, and that compares to less than 80 million on the previous program of 7 years. So it's a big step up to what was happening historically. And it's continued as well, it's consistent. By our count, there's been 29 million allocated to ocean energy projects in 2018 alone. So it's funded quite a wide variety of different projects. I just put some visuals up there of some of them. I'm sure you'll most of all be familiar with the Opera project, and we saw the really good results that came out of that in the previous session before we went for break. The thing about Horizon 2020 is that it's a really broad palette. There are lots of different ways that you can, in which funds are being channeled into ocean energy. So I think we're going to hear about the Oceanieranet fund later on. There's Horizon 2020 money being directed into that. And equally, we might be talking about a future wave pre-commercial procurement approach across Europe. There's going to be Horizon 2020 funds going into that as well. Just as an example, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, a recent call was announced for between 3 and 5 million euro. It's for monitoring systems for marine energy, so that's ocean and offshore wind, to bring the levels up from TRL 3 or 4 to 4 to 5. So this is an example of the sort of opportunities that are available out there. Just a final point about Horizon 2020, it doesn't end in 2020. They're already working on a successor program. It's got a name, it's called Horizon Europe. Now that legislation is still being agreed in Europe at the moment in Brussels, so we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But we know that the overall budget is going to be somewhere in the region of 100 billion. Now obviously that's for all innovation, not just in any one sector, but there is 15 billion that will be put aside for climate, energy and mobility. Renewables is going to be a big part of that, and innovative new breakthrough renewables is something that will be a key part of it too. I think the messages here is that there's going to be continued funds via the Horizon programme right up certainly until 2027 and beyond. 2 individual instruments, which are also Horizon related as well, which may be of greater or lesser interest to you depending on what it is that you're doing and what you want to achieve. The Fast Track to Innovation and the SME instrument. So the Fast Track to Innovation program is kind of, there's continuous calls running several times a year. I think the next deadline is in May of this year. So if it is something that's of interest to you, there still is the opportunity to apply. It's for promoting close to market innovation activities. So this is really for innovation activities that are just short of commercialization, but need an extra push to get through. There's a real interest in trying to get industry players involved in this, so they really like to see the collaboration between research and industry, but for this particular instrument they want a strong industrial partnership because they really want it to be on the edge of getting over into the market. So they're interested in the nature of the innovation you want to do, but they're also interested in the business plan you have to turn it into a reality. It can cover 70% of the costs of your project and up to 3 million as well. The other one, the SME instrument, it's, well, as you'd expect, it's for smaller and medium-sized enterprises. It's for smaller organizations that have a radical new idea that's either going to dramatically transform an existing market or is going to create an entirely new market. And again, just like the Fast Track to Innovation, they're interested in the idea, but they're also interested in your organization as well. They have 100 million euro going each year, and there's also multiple calls each year. So you have several opportunities to avail of this instrument. They take a kind of a 2-phased approach. So if you're going for the first time, you go and you ask for a feasibility grant. You look for 50,000 euro that gives you the time and the resources to really explore your innovation idea a bit more, to look into the feasibility of doing it, to come up with a business plan, just to make it more have a higher quality and a higher chance of success. If you're successful with that, at the end you can come back and you can apply for the second stage. So this is considerably more money. It's between 500,000 to 2.5 million, and it's for the development of the product or service, or for the demonstration as well, which is probably more relevant in an ocean energy context. The other point as well is that they're, as I was saying, they're interested in the organization as well as the idea. So alongside these grants, if you're successful, they'll also give training. So how do you develop your markets? How do you develop your organization? What kind of marketing skills you need? So that's to reinforce the organization as much as you're reinforcing the idea. Moving kind of up the scale, so getting kind of bigger now. One of the funds that the European Commission is working on at the moment that we're really quite excited on is the Innovation Fund. So this is the successor to NER 300 for those of you who might have heard of it. So NER 300 was really aimed at large-scale demonstration of technology that can reduce and avoid greenhouse gas emissions. And in practice, a lot of that is about new forms of renewable energy as well. So Ocean Energy was really successful in terms of getting awards under NER 300, and we're quite excited about what role we can play under the Innovation Fund as well. I suppose what's particularly interesting is the size of it. So the way they will allocate a budget for the Innovation Fund, it will be by the auctioning of carbon allowances via the emissions trading scheme. So that price goes up and down, so it depends on the market, so we can't say for sure. But at current market prices, that would be a pot of 9 billion euro. So up to 60% of a project costs can be covered. And what's new as well compared to the previous iteration as well is that they'll also cover some of the upfront costs as well. So you can get some of this grant before you've reached financial close on your project. You can also get additional amounts of grant even before your project enters into operation, with the remaining grants coming in tranches as you deliver more and more power according to what's agreed. And this is going to be really useful for those projects that are really good projects but are facing, the challenge that is the valley of death. It's about getting the financing for those projects. This will really help those and help those projects go ahead. They're working to get those first calls out by the end of 2020, so the end of next year, and that will last for a number of years afterwards. Just one final point about this as well. The legislation for the Innovation Fund is still being worked on, but currently there's a separate kind of allowance for smaller scale projects. So these are projects that are less than 7.5 million euros. Now, we don't know how much of the budget is going to go aside to them, but that's potentially very interesting for project and technology developers who are at that stage when they want to put a half-scale or a full-scale prototype device into the water as well. Final current instrument I want to talk about is the Innofin EDP. EDP stands for Energy Demonstration Projects. So this is a facility offered by the European Investment Bank, and the whole point of it is to try and get debt in for financing innovative energy technology demonstration projects. So for some of these large demonstration projects that I referred to in my previous slide, financing is the real challenge. You're trying to put stuff in the water that hasn't existed before. It's very hard to say how it's going to perform in 2, 5, 7, 10 years. And it's been extremely difficult for ocean energy project and technology developers to get financing for these projects. Debt would be a lot cheaper, but commercial banks aren't ready to go there simply because they can't quantify the risk. That means that developers need to go for equity, and where they can get that equity, the returns that are demanded are significantly higher, and that really can make a project really difficult to get financially closed, or it can even make the project unviable in some cases. So the EIB, it's a AAA rated bank, so it's an extremely well-regarded bank with good credit rates for the credit that it offers, but it's got a guarantee from the European Commission, and that allows it to take on riskier loans on things like emerging technologies. So they have a facility where they're prepared to offer debt on commercial terms to new projects, up to 50% of the size of the projects. Now, it is for larger projects. I think there's a minimum loan of 7.5 million euros. And there's already been a case, they've already provided a loan to AW Energy for 10 million in 2016 for their wave roller technology. How am I doing for time? Do I have another 2 or 3 minutes? Or? Yeah, okay. Just the thing I wanted to finish off on was, so everything I spoke about there, these are existing or forthcoming funding and financial opportunities that aren't just for ocean energy, but which are suitable to ocean energy. I think one thing we need to think about, given the challenges that we face as a sector is that we have specific risks, and that means we need to come up with some specific solutions for ocean energy. So this means that there needs to be some financing and funding and supporting mechanisms at a European level that are really tailored to ocean energy rather than ocean energy being fit into them. This is a lot harder to do. It's much more challenging because in many cases it's new, but it's really important as well. And these are just 4 that are kind of being worked on at the moment. So these came from the Ocean Energy Forum, which was a forum for the sector which finished its work in 2016. It produced a strategic roadmap, which you might have seen, and it came up with 4 recommendations that are needed to get the sector to the point of commercial rollout. One was a phase gate for wave, and I think Tim will be talking about that later on, but it's currently in the works. Another key one was environmental studies. So we need to have a really better understanding as to what the environmental impact of ocean energy devices is, because the better we understand that, the better we can do licensing and consenting. That allows the kit to go into the water, protects the environment, but doesn't create an unnecessary burden that's stopping projects in some cases. We also need an investment platform. So this is what I was speaking a bit about finance and the difficulty of getting equity in. And DJ Mario is in fact working on a blue economy investment platform. So it's going to have ocean energy as the core of it, but it's also going to look at other blue growth sectors of the economy. And they're working away on that this year. And then the final point is an insurance and guarantee scheme. So are there ways that we can reduce the risk of individual ocean energy demonstration projects to get that financing in, either equity at better rates or actual commercial credit from banks? So that's been a particularly tough nut to crack. That's something that has never been done before, and we're still figuring out how to do that. But that's something that we're going to work on over the next year or two to try and deliver that. I think that's it from me. As I said, I just provided an overview, but happy to take questions afterwards. And as I said, I'll be hanging around afterwards if you want to talk about the details of any of these funding opportunities. Thank you.
Many thanks, Donak, for this comprehensive and exhaustive presentation of the European landscape. I go directly now to Tim, who will be guiding us into innovative pre-commercial procurement and the experience of Wave Energy Scotland.
I don't think it's... I don't know where it's... That's co-fund. No, that's not this one. That's what that was the order then. So what is... Yes. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm Tim Hurst from Wave Energy Scotland. I'm going to talk to you briefly about pre-commercial procurement and its use for wave technology development. I've got it on the screen here. This is Xavier's fault. He's changed the order. It's not a good start for someone who's running a technology development program. Can't get the technology to work. Okay, we're there. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about pre-commercial procurement for wave technology development. There's been quite a lot of mention of it already. Pre-commercial procurement, phase gate process, Donna has already referred to. So what I'll do is explain what pre-commercial procurement is, and then how Wave Energy Scotland has used it to run a technology development programme, and then finish off with some sort of pros and cons about what's good about this sort of approach and what the disadvantages are. So, PCP overview. Pre-commercial procurement is a European funding mechanism that allows public procurers to procure R&D services and to develop a product for which there is no product in the market to fill their requirements. So it's a public sector tool. It's aimed at stimulating innovation and steering industry to provide solutions that are directly meeting the needs of the public procurer. It's a competitive process, so it involves contracting a number of industry players, developing technology, and then slowly reducing the numbers of technology as it becomes more mature, and then selecting the final products that you want. So that's difficult to explain, but I've got a diagram that perhaps makes that a bit more simple. And this is directly taken from the European Union's Pre-Commercial Procurement Bible, and it shows how the process works. So the development of a piece of technology is divided into roughly 3 phases, hence the phase gate technology description earlier on. The market is asked to provide solutions to that, and a number of suppliers that look like they have a technology that could be developed into the final product that you want, and in our case it's a wave energy device. They're contracted. They do a period of technology development where they take a concept and they develop the idea. That typically for WES would take, say, a year. And at the end of that time, they're evaluated and selected, and the best technologies are taken forward to phase 2, where the concept is further developed, more testing and demonstration is done, more engineering, and then a selection and evaluation that takes place again, and the best technology goes through to the final stage. So this is a process by which, at each stage, the public procurer is selecting the best technology. Each supplier is given the opportunity to develop their technology as best they can. They compete against each other, and the best ones get through to the end. This process is exempt from normal procurement rules because it's outside of the normal procurement. However, we do need to follow the usual principles of equality of treatment, transparency, mutual recognition, and proportionality. And in our case, we've just followed normal procurement rules. What PCP provides, well, it can provide up to 100% funding for contractors. So it's outside of state aid rules. contractors bid for each of these phases, but they can bid for up to 100% of the funds. This is a particularly useful feature for small technology companies, and particularly for WAVE, where private sector investment was certainly in 2014 when we started this was almost non-existent, and small companies couldn't find match funding for grant funds. To have a program that is run by 100% funding allowed technology development to continue. One of the other features of pre-commercial procurement is that it is open across Europe, and in fact across the EFTA countries as well. And that means that with a process of selection that we've talked about, you get the best technology. Whoever has the best technology will get through the phases. So it's a way of selecting the best technology from across Europe to meet your particular needs. Although each of the contractors are competing against each other, there is an element of collaboration in that to actually compete within the phases, generally you have to get together as a consortium to meet all the requirements of the calls, and very few individual companies get through. So that it does cause technology companies who don't have the breadth of knowledge that's required to actually get the specialist skills they need through partners to bid into a program like this. So the experience that we've had in WES, just a bit about Wave Energy Scotland to start with. We're funded by the Scottish Government entirely. We're administered via Highlands and Isles Enterprise, which is an enterprise agency within Scotland. The objective for us was to develop competitive wave technology. And as part of that, we've developed a wave technology program. And within it, there's 4 sub-programs, which I'll talk about in a minute. So we've been running the program since 2015. We've gone through 6 of those phase gates that we've talked about. We've had 177 different organisations from industry and academia involved in the program. We've committed around 45 million euros of expenditure over that time and run 84 individual projects and 84 individual contracts. I said it was open across Europe. There have been involvements from organisations from 13 countries across Europe. And so far we've received about 3,000 deliverables as part of that programme. So we took the decision to split the development of wave devices into subsystems and devices as well. One of the lessons that we learned from previous technology development programs in Scotland was that small technology companies that were developing a WEC, they were developing a power takeoff or a control system as well, found it very difficult to focus on all of those different subsystems and optimize all of them. And generally they've focused on their WEC and not necessarily on the subsystems. So in order to try and separate them out and perhaps get more established industry involved in the, for instance, power takeoff or control systems, we separated them into individual programs, which we ran separately. So that's a work program showing the 4 programs that we've run going back to 2015. So the first program we ran was the power takeoff program. We brought in 17 different technologies at the beginning, and over 3 years we've slowly reduced the number down to now 5 technologies that are at phase 3. We've run a wave program where we took in 8 device technologies, and we've now reduced that down to 2 technologies. And then we've also had structural materials where we took 13 projects in and we're down to 3, and control systems where we brought in 10 projects and we now have 3. We also have a moorings and foundations and electrical infrastructure program that we intend to run towards the end of this year. And the important thing about this is that they are all separate programs. Each of the technologies that come out of this is a standalone technology. And generally, where we can, we have funded generic bits of equipment, so PTOs that are applicable to many different WECs. But what has happened without us making it happen, is that they've started to integrate together. So the two wave devices that we've just funded to go through to stage three have taken PTOs that have come out of the program and control systems that have come out of the controls program. So there's been an element of integration that's happened just because the mature technology is applicable to the different types of technologies within the program. So that's what the program looks like. Just to take the center one there, the Wave Device program, and just look at it in a bit more detail. That's how the program ran over the last 3 years. We took in 37 different technologies, applications, and we chose 8 technologies, which are shown there. And they went through an 18-month testing and development program in which we did mathematical modeling, tank testing, performance testing. And one of the important things we did was we tested them in the tank in the same way. They all were tested against the same standard 13 C states, so that when we came to the phase gate and we came to selecting the next technology, we did it on hard data about the actual performance of the device, so that it was fair and equitable, an assessment. So 4 technologies then went through to stage 2. They carried on doing another 18 months of technology development, more tank testing at a larger scale, mathematical modeling, feed for the next stage. And again, they went through performance testing in the tank that was witnessed by WES. And again, when we went through the stage gate to go to stage 3, we used that performance data to help make our selection. And we've now just committed to 2 devices that will go to open sea testing in EMEC in the summer of 2020, which is AWS Ocean Energy's submerged pressure differential device and Motion Energy's articulated raft. So you can see how the process works. You start with lots of technology, you slowly work through development, and then you select the best as you go through it. And we've done the same with control systems and with structural materials. I'm not going to go through all of those, but just to give you a rough idea of some of the sort of technology that we now have, there's some examples from the Power Takeoff program. We tried to keep a range of different types of technology in there. So the 5 current PTO technologies are shown there. So Artemis and Quotient is a digital hydraulic system that's come from the wind industry. That's currently being tested in Mitsubishi wind turbines. Acos Subsea is a magnetic gear which uses a high ratio magnetic gearbox with some great features in that because it doesn't touch, it doesn't wear, and it can actually slip to avoid overloads. And that's come from the oil and gas industry. Umbra Group, who are an aircraft component manufacturer, have developed a integrated generator and ball screw technology. And the University of Edinburgh have developed an innovative linear generator technology. So those are the 4 that are current in the program, and Core Power have recently finished their WES program. Their Cascade direct drive gearbox was recently tested over the summer in EMEC up in Orkney. Okay, so that's basically the program. One of the other features of pre-commercial procurement is if the public sector are going to give you 100% of your funding, then you have to give something back, and you have to publish many of your results. And WES has to find a way of doing that to disseminate it. And we've developed an online repository, the WES Library, where you can go and see reports and outputs and results from all of the projects that we've run, as well as some historical information that we've managed to capture from the developments of Aquamarine and Polaris and previous Scottish technologies. So that's all on there. But it is, as I say, a legal requirement of the PCP process that you must do that. So that's really it from me. I think pre-commercial procurement is a very good tool for public bodies to develop technology. If you know what you want and you have the time to do it, pre-commercial procurement is very good at taking industrial partners and driving their technology towards the product that you want. It's a very powerful tool, and it's very applicable to WAVE at the moment because of its funding structure. There are some downsides. To run a program like that requires, as the EU say, an intelligent customer. You have to employ people who are engineers, who understand wave energy, to be able to run a program like that. And as it says there, WES has 11 engineers. They're not all employed on running the program, but we do need quite a lot of staff to do it. And also to remain open and fair. One of the features that we've used is that we've used external experts to do, or supplemented our engineering capability with some external experts to make the whole thing independent. So there's an additional cost there. So overall, I think the benefits of running a pre-commercial procurement far outweigh the disadvantages. And I think it's a very good fit for the sort of technology requirements we see in WAVE at the moment. And as Dano said earlier, the EU have committed to developing a PCP for WAVE. And WES, as part of OceanSet, is working to help design a structure for the EU along with several other member states. So hopefully we can recreate the same performance and results at a European level rather than in Scotland. Okay, thank you. Right, I'm not going to touch it.
Thanks a lot, team, to present in such a concentrated and limited time this different articulation of the WES work. Next is this time is Gemma. So you will be presenting your work on the Ocean Aeronet. The floor is yours.
I'm going to introduce you the second joint call 2019 of the initiative Ocean Aeronet Co-Fund, which is particularly focused on ocean energy. I will start by introducing you the initiative, and then I will explain the main features of this call at transnational level, and I will end my presentation with a very brief introduction of the Cgi Funding for those Spanish stakeholders interested in applying. Ocean Aeronet Co-Fund is a 5-year program co-financed by the European Commission and the Horizon 2020 program. This Aeronet action aims at supporting the consolidation of the European leadership on ocean energy. And the specific goals are, first of all, the launch of a co-funded joint call, which was implemented in 2017. And this call was focused on supporting demonstration of ocean energy technologies. The second joint call, which I'm presenting today, is more focused on lower tier Ls, meaning we are going to support research and development also in ocean energy. And Ocean Air also develops another kind of joint activities to boosting coordination, knowledge transfer, and exploitation of resources among different countries and regions, and also across Europe. So this initiative also contributes to the implementation of the set plan, and is aligned with the different initiatives we have at European level from the Ocean Energy Forum, the different platforms and associations. As you can see, this is a small consortium. It's led by Scottish Enterprise from Scotland, and bring together 4 countries, Spain, Ireland, Portugal, and Sweden, and 4 regions. Best country in Spain, Pays de la Loire and Region Bretagne in France, and Scotland, of course, from the UK. Last joint call was very successful. We found around 8 projects with around 8 million euros, with a 1/3 contribution from the European Commission. And as you can see, there is a great variety of projects from wave, tidal, ocean, thermal ocean energy, and also different topics from composites, foundations, moorings. The average project is around 1 to 2 million, and these are smaller consortium than another kind of European projects. The second joint call is a bit different because, as I mentioned before, it's more focused on development, but also covers demonstration and validation of technologies. And this call, as another ERNET calls, is focused on collaborative and transnational projects. So projects must bring and add transnational value and also progress technologies, at least 1 tier L. So we expect projects starting from tier Ls 3 to 6 and moving to tier Ls 4 to 8. These projects will be led by industry, and the focus is on its driving research. We are interested in supporting the ocean energy sector to overcome the barriers by improving performance, reaching a cost reduction, and also reliability and survivability that, as you know, are some of the main barriers of the ocean energy. And the second joint call, as another transnational call, the main feature you need to be reminded is that funding is decentralized. And that means that each funding agency will fund the beneficiaries from their respective countries or regions. The overall funding is around 7 million, but you need to take into account the available funding in your country. For example, the participating countries in this call are not the same that all the consortium. In this call, there are seven agencies from Scotland, Flanders, Pays de la Loire, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, and Sweden. That means that for the regional agencies, only those beneficiaries for the regions are eligible. For example, in the UK, there are only funding for the Scottish participant, not the whole United Kingdom. And as you can see, there is a variable geometry. For example, in Scotland, they have available around £1 million, while in Spain, for example, we have almost 1 million. This technology covers all the types of ocean energy, as the previous presentation of Ocean Energy Europe mentioned, wave energy, tidal stream, tidal range, salinity gradient, and OTEC. But bear in mind that not all the funders cover all the technologies, so you need to check the national programs to make sure that a particular technology is covered by your agency. For example, Sweden does not cover tidal range, or for example, in France, salinity gradient is not covered. And regarding call topics, Ocean Era covers the whole spectrum, the whole value chains. So any kind of topic will be fun, from ocean energy devices being novel or improved, any kind of component or subsystems, electrical and grid issues, materials, structures, or manufacturing processes. Also covers the development of technology for the improvement of installation, operation, and maintenance, and the development of tools for the resource or impact assessment. The focus is always, as I mentioned before, the reduction of costs, improvement of performance, survivability, and safety. Having explained the overall technologies and topics, I will focus now on the specific eligibility criteria. So what kind of organization or how looks like the consortiums? Eligible organizations will strongly depend on the national programs also. So in principle, enterprises, research organizations, or universities are welcome to participate, but each organization must comply with the national rules. And of course, another kind of organizations from outside of Ocean Era can participate, but they should provide their own funding. The eligible consortium will consist of at least 2 entities from 2 different countries or regions, but bear in mind that we recommend to go beyond these minimum requirements. First of all, because transnationality, the add value is highly important for the evaluation, and also on the other hand, because a bilateral project could be weak in terms of if one of the partners have a problem, the project could lose the fund. So we recommend to go beyond. And projects should be led by industry. That means that consortium must comprise at least 1 enterprise, and the 51% of the person months and project costs should be incurred across the enterprise partners. And also the coordinator must be based in a participating country. Project must be transnational and fully relevant within the call scope. We expect there are no maximum or minimum requirements in terms of the consortium, but we expect a balanced consortium. For being transnational and being collaborative, a single partner or country region cannot exceed 70% of the total project budget. And at least 2/3 of the project costs will be incurred by partners for the participating countries. Duration of project must range between 12 and 36 months. And another eligibility criteria is that all consortia must comply with the mandatory application, being transnational or being specific national requirements. And how the call of the overall process looks like. Well, this kind of transnational calls have 2 different phases: the international procedure and the national procedure. The national procedure depends on the national programs, so we recommend to check the national rules, which are available at the Annex B of the call announcement. And regarding the international phase, it's organized in 2 different steps. The first step is the expression of interest. It's mandatory to be eligible to submit a proposal in the second step. And this expression of interest will be checked in terms of eligibility, and you will receive feedback in 2 weeks. So you can sell the expression of interest as soon as possible, no later than the 1st of March. And those eligible expression of interest will be invited to the proposal step, which will be open from the 8th March to the deadline is the 5th of April. These proposals will be checked in terms of eligibility, and next will be evaluated by the peer review panel. This is how looks like the overall call. So as you can see, the communication of results of the first step will be issued by 8th of March. And then it will start the second step with the submission of proposals, as I mentioned, in 5th of April. The evaluation panel will be held in September, mid-September. And then in this evaluation panel, the expert will rank the proposals according to the specific scientific quality. With these rank proposals, the agencies will meet in a selection committee and will try to fund as many projects as possible according to the available funding. The communication of results will be available at the end of October, and then it will start the formal contract phase according to the national requirements. The evaluation process follows a similar process than in Horizon 2020. 3 experts will evaluate each proposal based on 3 criteria: excellence, impact, and quality of implementation. The scale is 0 to 5 points with an individual threshold of 3. That means that you need a good excellence, good impact, and good implementation to get your project approved. It's very important when preparing your proposal to describe your project in a clear and concise way. We recommend you to put on the shoes of the evaluators and try to help them to understand your proposal. So we recommend you to be prepare your proposal enough understandable and appealing to make them understand and appreciate your proposal. And in terms of excellence, it's very important to demonstrate how your project contributes to the ocean energy sector, demonstrate sound, credible goals, and how your project represents a challenge and goes beyond state of the art. In terms of impact, it's not important to describe your contribution qualitative way, but only quantify and include indicators. Of course, it's important to describe how your project contributes to overcome barriers in the ocean energy sector, particularly market. And some habitually experts highlight that one of the limitations of the proposal is the exploitation. So make sure that your proposal covers a sound IPR approach. Of course, sustainability is very important in ocean energy, so go beyond the economic and market impact and describe also any social or environmental advantage. And when it comes to implementation, be sure that present a balanced consortium with a balanced distribution of tasks and responsibility, and demonstrate also the transnational value of the project. And of course, a good project management with a risk approach is recommended. And how to apply? It's very easy to apply. You only need the submission by the coordinator through the Ocean Era website, the electronic submission system, and you can find all the information at Ocean Era website. So it's very simple. At the Ocean Era website, you can find the call announcement and the 2 different proposals you will need, because there are 2 different applications for each of the stage. A first application for the expression of interest. As I mentioned, the deadline is the 1st of March at 5, and the proposal stage at 5th April. Both proposals are composed of one part, which is complete online, and another part B, which is at template. So it's very simple. You only need to register, click on new application, complete the part A online, download the template according to the different stage, and upload the document. You can submit the application whenever you want and edit between a stage. All the instructions are within the guide for applicants, available also on the website. Well, the key dates, I will skip because I will need more time to explain the next slides. When preparing your consortium, building up your consortium, it's very useful to have different tools. We recommend you to use the Ocean Era B2B portal, because you can find their marketplace with different ideas and offers. You can share comments with other interested applicants. So we recommend you to check the available offers and to register your idea there. And there are also other tools, for example, Enterprise Euro Network, which is very useful for finding partners. And you can also check Cordis or national platforms or European platforms also. You have all the supporting information at Ocean Era website, and you can contact also for any kind of doubt or for any kind of problem you have with the submission tool with the John Cole Secretariat. And also we strongly recommend you to contact your national contact points in case you are interested in this call, because they will help you to understand if your proposal fits the call, and it's highly important because one of the main problems in eligibility is because the project sometimes does not fit the call, so it's highly important to contact. Having explained more or less the main features of the transnational call, I will focus now very briefly in the Cgi funding. Eligibility in Cgi is, well, I will explain for those stakeholders not understanding Cgi. Cgi is the main funding agency in Spain focused on industry and innovation. And we are partners of this ERANET, and we are supporting this the national entities in this call. Well, the project's the eligibility of CGI is addressed only to enterprises established in Spain, but another kind of entities could participate as subcontracting. Eligible activities are technology-based, industrial research, or experimental development, according to the state aid definition. There is a compulsory minimum budget around 175,000. There is not a maximum. And projects should be transnational with a duration range between 12 and 36 months, and it's mandatory to submit a national application in Spanish. Expenditures are typical: personal, instrument, operating costs, subcontracting up to 50% of the budget, audit, and overheads. And I will now underscore the relevance of understanding what does it mean industrial research and experimental development, because it is one of the main reasons on non-eligibility in Spain. We understand industrial research or experimental development as the use of knowledge to develop new or significantly improve products, processes, or services based on technology. That means that a relevant technological advance is expected. Projects will be bring enough novelty and innovation beyond the state of the art. That means that any other kind of activity, non-technological activities, are not eligible for funding. And Cgi Funding for this call, particularly as this is not a co-finance call by the European Commission, Cgi Funding is based on financial package. Consists of soft loan up to 85% of the budget, with a non-repayable part up to 33%, which is assimilable to a grant. You can ask for pre-financing up to 35% for starting your project, and also brings an assessment report for claiming reduction of tax reduction for research and development. This aid is compatible with other grants, but the enterprise should provide a minimum of 50% with own resources. And the national procedure is also simple. It's mandatory to present a national application, which is preliminary and ECOFAN, and the deadline is before 5 of March. In the proposal step, we only ask a kind of update of information in case some change has happened. And if the project is approved at international level, it's necessary to formalize the contract by another application, which is a Proyecto ID application from November on. It's important to comply with the incentive effort. That means that the starting day should be at least 48 hours afterwards the submission of this full proposal. As a recap, I'm finalizing now. As a recap, I recommend you to check profoundly the call announcement and also the national annexes to make sure that your project fits the call, and contact your NCP. Remember to send the expression of interest by the deadline, also preliminary CGI if you apply for CGI, and the international proposal by 5th of April. You have all the documentation available at Oceanair website and also CGI website. And just to comment for the end of the presentation, that as you can see, this call is funding opportunity is the scope is lower than Horizon 2020, but is relevant funding for acting as a bridge between national and European funding. So it covers, it aims at supporting those stakeholders, enhancing their internationalization capacity, and covering lower projects and less ambitious projects, but are equally important for the development of ocean energy. Many thanks, and muchas gracias.
Thank you, Gemma, for this very clear presentation of the objective and the practical steps of working with Ocean Aeronet. and it's clearly a good example of collaborative funding where regions have also a dynamic role and ownership. Last speaker for today, the local one, Jago, please.
Okay, Arratsaldeon, buenas tardes, and welcome everybody. After this 3 speech, detailed with a detailed scope and so on, I just wanted to share with all you some thoughts and feeling about supporting mechanism for ocean energy. I'm going to start saying some words about BMEP, obviously, and just go through the supporting mechanisms. BMEP is a public body, is a public entity, a limited entity owned by the Spanish government and the Basque government through their energy agencies, Ente Vasco de la Energía y DAE. Both have invested together up to 20 million euro. And I was thinking when I was preparing this presentation that any developer that wants to use BMEP during a whole year, it would have to pay some 100% of this amount of money. And I think that this is a way of supporting the development of this field. Okay, we are located in the Basque Country, in this corner of the Gulf of Biscay, and we have two sites, Armintza and Mutriku, in a highly industrialized region in Europe. On the left, we can see Mutriku site. It's an open sea. It means that the sea can reach openly the breakwater. Open sea, full-scale, grid-connected site that was built with the only aim of producing electricity and exporting it to the grid. But since 2 years ago, more or less, it's been used as a test site too. At the same time, it is producing electricity. We can host tests of new designs of air turbines and control and algorithms to optimize the production of the turbines. And on the right side, we can see Armintza site, which maybe better known as test site than Mutriku, with 4 cables, submarine cables and connectors, a restricted area just for demonstrating the technology of renewable energy converters, the surveillance service, all those things any developer need to demonstrate their technology in the sea. We have a deep knowledge of the area, a deep knowledge of the bathymetry, of the conditions of the seabed, the geophysics, the waves, the currents, and the wind. Everything is available to any developer or any scientist or any researcher or whatever, people interested on this, and it's available for free. And I think that it can be considered as a supporting mechanism too. We have an alliance with IH Cantabria, using their skills in numerical modeling and physical modeling, with our ability and capability of giving a good place to demonstrate in a full-scale phase. We can make the trip from the concept to the real sea with any developer. And we have an alliance with Tecnalia, and mainly we are working in two fields. In the certification, we want to go forward in that field, and in the materials. Trying to, it has been presented this morning, the possibility of testing any material or coating to prove the behavior in real sea conditions. We have been hosting the development of trials with a small system or components and the full system in the case of the Marmocca. It is a pre-permitted site. It means that any developer that wants to be in the sea, they don't need to spend time and money trying to obtain the permits. That's there. All that is there. Then that can be a supporting mechanism too. And the same to say in the field of safety. We have some good studies and some good procedures to assure that the test is going to be developed under the best conditions, trying to reduce risk, and it means reduce money. And now let's go to the supporting mechanism. Let's start talking about the feed-in tariff, or cost for difference, or ROCs, or whatever you want. Our feeling is that maybe this tool is appropriate for pre-commercial and first commercial development, but it doesn't suit very well to a test phase. Because most of the time during any test, the amount of electricity, and it means amount of money, you are going to obtain as a result of this testing is not very much. I was going to say negligible. I am going to. It's not very much, not very high. But we need a feed-in tariff because it's going to act as a lighthouse. We need to know where we should look at and what is our first target. And I'm going to support that work with the Mutriku case, even though Mutriku was not a test, can be used. Mutriku power plant is up and running since July 2011, only has been stopped during 3 months during the first winter. Up to now, Mutriku has produced close to 1 million kilowatts-hour, produced and injected into the grid. The total investment was a bit more than 6 million euro. If we make the exercise of thinking a tariff of 200 euros per megawatt, that is quite high. It is more or less the tariff that Xavier has talked before during the morning. We think that with this ratio of production during a 2-year trial, the amount of money is more or less 1.5% of the money invested in the power plant. It's money, but it's not much money comparing with the whole. Regarding grants, understanding grants, the money you receive as a gift is a suitable tool for testing, but it's not enough. Usually it's capped at 50%. There are some exceptions. There are some programs that promise you 100% of some of the costs. The examples I am showing are related with the fee of the testing sites. Marina 2, Blue Gift, that is a kind of 4C in the south of Europe. In addition of that, we have the EBE, Demonstration Support Program. This program is eligible any invoice regarding the testing phase. except the own costs, the own staff and the manufacturing of the device. And let's draft some numbers. We can establish as an example that any phase, testing phase for a developer in a full scale, we can think on 4 years program, 1.5 years for designing and building the device, a couple of years for being in the sea, and 6 months for decommissioning and everything. We can set a budget of 4 million euro, a bit more, a bit less. In this, considering this quantity, with the budget EBE have or BIMEP have or IMEC has in the Marinet program, it will cover roughly a bit less than 4% of this budget. Or in the case of Blue Gift, we have a bigger budget and maybe we can cover 8% of the budget. If this developer applies to the EBE program, roughly 25% of 4 million euro. It's a lot of money, but you have to pay the rest. Yeah, that is a bit bigger. Some other supporting mechanisms, loan-based funding programs. They are suitable for having cash flow. In Spain, a typical case, GEMA has presented a bit better numbers than these ones, but 70% of the budget with a part of non-reimbursable money. Let's talk about 7 years or 10 years for reimburse this tranche of money. This is a good tool for an economic research that in the short term is going to be to become a profitable activity. You are going to generate money from this research, and then you are able to give back the money. I assume, or I presume, I feel that is not the case of Ocean Energy, even though it's welcome the loan and it's welcome the cash flow that it provides. And the tax relief, it has appeared a bit in the GEMA presentation. Obviously, even in Ireland, any company with profits has to pay taxes. And if you invest in R&D, at least in Spain, you can obtain a tax relief. In Ocean Energy, most of the companies are small companies that has not profits. But anyway, there is a mechanism for transferring these rights of deducing money to those companies that has profits and no investment in R&D. Okay, it's there. It's something that should be explored because at the end of the day, it's a mechanism for obtaining money for trials. And about PCP, I am not going to talk too much to pre-commercial procurement. As it is a procurement, it can provide up to 10%, 100% of the investment. The procurer is buying R&D under some conditions, and at the end, in a successful case, the procurer is going to obtain a license or royalties or whoever or whatever. And pre-commercial means that the final product of this process is not a commercial device yet. It should be a bit more mature. The 3 main characteristics is that a public body acts as a procurer and is assuming most of the risk and the costs, and that's good for the developer. It's open to everybody and it's a competitive process that try to give the procurer the confidence that what is going to be buy is the best of what is being offering. Okay, and as a conclusions, better say as a summary because I am not reaching any conclusion. The testing phase is a very intensive, demanding phase on capital with high risks and it doesn't promise in short term any profits. And there are several supporting mechanisms. Some of them are monetary, some of them not. The testing infrastructure relieve costs, time and risk, and I think that they are fully necessary for the sector. Grants, 50% is a lot, but the other 50% is a lot too that has to be faced by the developer. The loans are good, but doesn't suit very well with the needs of the developer, even though it's good to have them. The feed-in tariff, again, is not going to be the lever that is going to make the testing affordable for any developer. But anyway, we need them for knowing what is the target in a medium term. R&D tax in relief is a good tool to explore and to play with, trying to go forward. And at the end, PCP possibly is the tool that is going to make the most in this phase nowadays to make the sector go forward. And all these feelings, what I was wanting to share with all you. Thanks.
Many thanks, Iago, for this in-depth analysis, the presentation of the work and services that BMAP is delivering, but also this very interesting analysis of, at the testing phase, what are the instruments and the gaps. I open the floor to questions. Please.
I'm Simone from Logan.
Just, if you can wait just a bit, then you get a mic.
Yeah, I'm Simone from Plocan, the test site in the Canary Islands. So first of all, thanks to all of you to give us this brief introduction on funding mechanism. And I would like to ask a question to Gemma and take advantage of the presentation from Iago, especially in the mechanism supporting the Ocean AeroNet co-fund mechanism. And I would like to know why CDTI is considering this non-reimbursable the soft loan mechanism, because I think the other member states are just using grants instead of soft loans, because especially considering the TRL progresses that you want, which is from 3 to 6, up to 6 to 8, if I remember correctly, which is still difficult to provide benefits to companies. So I think I see some difficulties to match soft loans with the TRL, and considering especially the difficulties that ocean energy developers are facing. So is there any hope that CDTI can change this mechanism, or why, when compared to other member states? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I agree with you. The problem is not CDTI, the problem is the ability of grants in Spain, and I think that it will be very useful to have grants for the kind of transnational coal, and for particularly for ocean energy, because we understand the risk are there and the market is very incipient. So we perfectly understand the needs of the sector. The problem is a limitation from the political side and the availability of funding for this kind of project. CGI funding, CGI program, is usually implemented by loans. Then grants are very particular and specific programs, normally to support international coal or innovators, startups, that kind of projects. And the first call in Oceanera we use grants because it was co-funded by European Commission, and the European Commission demands the use of grants for receiving the top-up, which is the co-fund that they use to support these kind of actions. So in this case, we reach an agreement to support projects with grants, but in the rest of the cases, unfortunately, we use the normal instrument of CDTI, which is based on loans. I think that we need some kind of policy briefs, we need some kind of policy instruments to make policymakers understand the needs of particular needs of the ocean energy and other sectors also, to make grants more available for agencies like us to support not only ocean energy but other emerging technologies. But I think that is something that we need to deal with at policy level, because it's, most of you know that the problem is the availability of funds to research, and normally grants are used only for research organizations, universities, and they understand that companies should make an effort, and that loans are of course an attractive funding, and actually the process is more flexible and you get your contact very quickly, you can start working on your project very quickly, and grants are more complex. But I think that we need to work in that sense, policy level, and at the short term, I don't think we can have grants, but only in specific actions supported by the European Commission. At short term, I don't see a solution for this problem, but we normally translate the voice of the stakeholders to our managing board, and maybe if we keep on trying to struggle with these things, we will get more understanding of the problem. But I think that we need some kind of political support.
So small companies, as Iago say, are working in this wave energy device developments, and they are facing difficulties to get warranties to support the soft loans mechanism. So that will really kill the opportunity to get access to this funding mechanism. And also considering the PCP calls that Tim mentioned, it would be good to have this problem solved in the near terms. So
yes, well, for small companies, CTI has been working of improving the financial conditions in terms of warranties, with a reduction of the warranties they ask for the small enterprises. But it's true that it's not the best instrument for the small companies with low benefits. It's true, but CGI is working in that sense, and it's also working in new instruments. For example, public procurement is working. So we are improving our instruments thanks to the demands from the market and stakeholders, and I recommend you to translate your demands to our institutions, our managers, because they sometimes need the stakeholders to provide the vision to make them understand the problem. But it's true that CGI is working on that sense, and but a long way has to be walked.
how can we
Maybe we can.
okay.
Yeah. Sorry, we can speak later if you want.
Just to make a try to open up the discussion, if there's other question from the room. I'm sure Simeone has a question, but others may as well. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm François-Xavier Failly. I work for Technalia, and I had a question for Team Hurst. Well, it's impressive, first of all, to see the amount of knowledge generated by the programs and the development done so far. My question maybe is more about technology. You said that there's a good collaboration between the different technology developers, and is there a will for WES to create a kind of super WEC and converge these kind of technologies? And if so, is there a timeline for that? Thank you.
Super WEC, yeah. That sounds like a great idea. I think with the current mechanism that we're using, pre-commercial procurement, we can't do that. We can't force them to converge, unless I guess we could start a super WEC PCP, but that would require a huge amount of funding. So I'm just not sure whether that's physically possible. There's a limit to what we can do with the funding that we've had of sort of, you know, roughly 10 million euros a year is the funding that WES has, and we've tried to squeeze as many programs out of that money as we can. 4 programs that we thought were the core programs that covered the parts, you know, the core parts of a WEC, and we see that integration together. That wasn't forced. That was very much down to the choices of the contractors. That the technology just happened to fit, possibly because of where we specified the technologies and what the end state should be, and the timing was right that they could all integrate together. I think perhaps Super WEC might be something for Wave Energy Europe.
That sounds like a plan. Anyone else? So maybe I have one for the panel back to Tim as well. With the activity over the last 4 years you have in WES, you have quite a very good insight knowledge about what has been achieved. But the question would be, what at this point in time, what do you think are the critical areas where much of the work should concentrate on to get wave devices closer to higher TRL and closer to commercial phase, or pre-commercial phase?
I think our program takes us up to putting devices in the water at half scale. So they're proof of concepts. And the next stage, I think, is the critical one. And the next stage where you take those devices to a full stage device, and then you're moving on to a commercial product. That's the area where so many others have fallen, and that's where the funding gets particularly difficult. We've all heard of the Valley of Death and all that sort of problem. Pre-commercial procurement doesn't take us to that stage. You saw that diagram I put up at the beginning where there's a distinct separation between pre-commercial procurement and then public procurement of innovation. And I think we still don't necessarily have the right tools for that. And also the costs of development are going up exponentially as you move in that direction. So PCP works very well at the early stages, but as we start to get to putting large-scale devices in the water and arrays, then it's an order of magnitude more in terms of funds. And I think financing those particular stages are still problematic, and I don't think there's really a clear route without tariffs within member states to take us through that. And my concern is that programs like WES and Wave Energy Europe, if it happens, will start pushing technology towards that point, but then it's very difficult to then move it into a commercial environment. So more work for you, Xavier.
Yes, very good. And maybe to end up, I can't really miss the opportunity to ask to Iago, because we understand you made good conclusion, but you were quite close to make also recommendation, and I'm pretty sure you have some in mind, especially targeting on test centers, the type of services they are delivering at early stage and most advanced stage. How do you see in an ideal world this type of structure could move on the financing part?
Okay, for test center, we would like to go forward in 2 fields. One of them is make easier anything for the developer, and it means, for example, something that we have talked with Scottish people, the idea of trying to reach a cheaper way of mooring or any system, or cheaper way of being connected to the grid, or some other small things, or not as small, that maybe can be solved in a general way that later can be used for by almost all the developers. And on the other hand, we are conscious about the general problems they have to obtain money, and then our position is that we have to repeat it here and there and anywhere, because when a developer is saying I need more money, maybe it's nothing new on that. I mean, it's normal that they are asking for money, but we in this field are more or less a third party. We have some interest, of course, because we are offering access and we are offering our business there, but we are a third party in regarding their needs and their problems to obtain money. Then just the idea of sharing this with you or with any at any administrative level is good, I think.
Very good, thanks. Last question from the audience. That won't be for today. Very good. Thanks a lot to the four panelists. I think you can give large applause for this session.